People of Reddit with scars, what is your worst story behind them? I have 3 different cigarette burns on my right arm that have never went away. The first one came from me being incredibly drunk and telling my friends that they could burn me with it if they wanted because mama didn't raise no itch. The second one was from being really drunk a different time and my friends telling me that I was afraid to get burned with a cigarette again because it hurt too bad the first time. The third time, you guessed it, my mom also gets really upset every time she sees them. I can't tell if she's crying because she's upset that I permanently scarred my body, or if they're tears of joy because she can die knowing that she, in fact, didn't raise no itch. My 6-inch emergency C-section scar. I woke up 7 months pregnant to go to bathroom and right when I stepped on the floor, a huge gush then splash. I yell for my husband to turn on the light and it's all blood. I run to the bathroom gushing blood everywhere and sit on the toilet because I was in shock shaking and didn't know what else to do as my husband called an ambulance. They put me in surgery right away. I lost 25% of my blood in the hospital, not counting ambulance and my home. My 3-pound daughter survived being 2 months early. My father, who went to Vietnam twice, came to the house to clean up while I was in the hospital and said he didn't know if he'd see me alive again by the amount of blood there was. We are 2 lucky girls. A few months ago, I was sleeping and was shifting a bit in my bed. My face hit the corner of my wooden headboard, which is considerably sharp. I was pretty sleepy, so I didn't realize what had happened till I woke up. I woke up to red covering my face, which was pretty scary. I had a scar at my left eyebrow but it faded. My brother and I had one of those toy castles as a kid and he fell off the top bunk bed and landed on it with his rib cage. I'm glad you're okay though. I laughed and went back to sleep. The gash down my leg I got when struggling to free myself from an assaulter. I try to see it as a reminder that I did get away. It's a reminder of your strength. You were able to fight harder, physically and mentally, than your attacker. You won. Thanks, friend. That's a helpful affirmation. Not me, but my mother. I don't remember exactly how many she has, but somewhere around 15-20 on each arm. They're not small but not huge, just enough to cover most of her forearms. And it's kind of my fault. When I was very small, I was feeding my dog, a lab, and my uncle's dog, an untrained Rottweiler, some leftover waffles. Uncle's dog stole one as I was feeding it to my dog and bit my thumb in the process. My mom yelled no at him and he walked to the back of the yard then charged full speed at me. Not my mom, who had shouted at him, but at me, the crying toddler. My mom got there just in time to shield me from the attack. She always says it was the worst moment of her entire life, though not the pain. She says the worst part was wondering if she could run fast enough to get me out of the way. When I was a baby I always cried. My mother didn't know what was the problem so she just gave more food, because it seemed to work. It got so bad that when I was 2 months old my intestines got all tangled up and I was going to die. So I went through a surgery and the doctor who was operating said he had to rearrange my intestines so it won't happen again. Ever since that day I have a big scar on my belly. In short, I had to go through a surgery while I was 2 months old. This happened in a 2-bedroom hotel apt. Me and a friend were going to beat up, in a friendly way, another friend. We hit him and we retreat, but he shuts off the light and roars. I freak out and try to run away. I graze my side on the doorknob, and it left a nasty scar. I tell people I woke up in a bathtub full of ice after a shady spa treatment, slightly hinting they took my kidney. Nice. That's funny. I have a 4-inch long scar on my side. I got it when I was a kid trying to catch bees. Stupid, I know. By jumping in the air towards low-hanging branches to catch the bees in a bucket. One time I jumped up but had a little bit of sideways momentum and impaled myself on the handle of an outdoor caged enclosure that held chickens. After unimpaling myself, I told my teacher what happened and she just said to rub soap and water on it. No idea how I didn't get an infection or something, but it healed up fine as far as I remember. I have around 8 scars on my arm because I fight and wrestle with my Doberman. Not like fight, just like shoving and playing. How old is your Doberman? About 3 now. Not too old. It's not where I have big scars, but they're just tiny. 12 years of self-harm. I got help and don't do that anymore. I wish I hadn't. But I'm not ashamed of my scars anymore. My arms and legs are covered in them to the point where my arms are almost all scar. But I don't mind. It's proof that I survived. After my dad threw my mom against a wall while drunk. He cut me with a kitchen knife when I stood between him and my mom. In college I was dealing with serious depression mania and had been struggling for years. I ended up cutting up my wrists and being admitted to the psych ward of our local hospital. Worst day of my life. I had to leave school afterward and come home for treatment. While I have to manage my mental health, I have been functioning and doing pretty well for years. However, I now have faded scars running up the inside of my forearms. I forget about them a lot because I'm used to them. But every once in a while I remember that they are there and wonder how many people I know have noticed them and can tell what they're from. Playing hide and go seek as a kid. It was dark and I tripped on a small hole in the ground. My knee smashed into a rock. It ripped through my jeans and left me with a deep gash, from what I remember. I passed out. Still have a scar from it. What makes it so bad is that I was so excited about this outing with my best friends and I was supposed to spend the weekend with them. But instead I had to get stitches and spend the weekend in bed. Worst part is that it happened less than 5 minutes after the game started. Putting weight on. Like stretch marks? Got bit by a brown recluse spider in my sleep. My third coward got me in my own bed. Anyway. The scar looks exactly like a cigarette burn. So sometimes for fun I say I got drunk with my friends and told them they could burn me because mama didn't raise no itch. In reality, I had a big gaping hole of rotting flesh on my right forearm for a couple months. I could see the bone. My father was a drinker and a fiend, and one night he goes off crazier than usual. Modifying my Nerf gun. I scraped my knuckle on the rug too many times dealing with a strip screw. That's a pretty bad story. Perhaps my worst. I have a scar on my finger from a dog bite. We had got this 3-year-old husky from the shelter that was very passive and didn't like to be near people. So once we brought it home he was being nice. So then we decided it would be a good idea for it to meet my grandma's small, very playful dog. The next thing you know, the husky takes my grandma's dog by the neck and starts shaking, so I grab the husky's jaw and try to peel him off of my grandma's dog, who was bleeding everywhere. I would have torn my entire finger off if my grandma didn't come in and tear him off of my grandma's dog. My finger was bleeding really bad and I was crying so hard. I was 12 at the time. Looking back at it, I ultimately feel bad for the dog. He waited so long to be taken in from the shelter, and when he did he got spooked from another dog. This could ultimately be from a past experience that the husky had no control of. Right when the husky let go, he ran into the corner where he has been hiding that day and started crying. I had been emotionally attached to that dog, and that's what broke my heart the most. That's what left the biggest scar. I have a 3-stroke 4-inch scar on my pinky finger from where I busted out a window to rescue a 4-year-old from a house fire. Then performed CPR on her until medics arrived, 10 minutes or so. Unfortunately, the 4-year-old didn't survive. Hid close to home because my daughter was 5 at the time and we go to church with the family. You're still a hero. That scar is proof that you gave your all. And I know her parents are still thankful to this day. I will share my 3 worst. Scarface scar. When I was 3, I was jumping on my mom's bed. Slipped. And busted my eyebrow open and needed 28 stitches. Shin scar. This one still hurts. I jumped into a river from a cliff without checking the depth. Went shin first into a boulder. Tore all kinds of skin meat off the day before football practice started. Ankle scar. Channeled my inner Jeff Hardy, wrestler. and performed his finishing maneuver to my pillow opponent. My ankle scraped the side of the bed and tore all the skin off, exposing the meat. I was 14 and had so much fun explaining this to my grandma as I collapsed in pain in the hallway. Posted before, but it got buried because I was late to that post. My scar is mostly concealed under my right eyebrow, in an arc following right along the center line. I was 17 weeks pregnant. That's almost halfway through. The baby died suddenly, and we had to wait until nature took its course, and so I had a late-term miscarriage 7 days later after having to carry my dead child for a week. During the miscarriage, I bled so much I knew I would need to go to the ER. So naturally, it made sense to distressed and low on blood me to get up and get dressed first. I passed out from loss of blood, hit the wall head first, and my glasses frame broke and dug into my skin, leaving me with my eyebrow scar as the glasses were caught between the wall and my head as I slid down the wall to hit the floor. Now I have this concealed scar that looms emotionally large to me and constantly reminds me of the worst day of my adult life. Yay. I only have this scar on my knee where I bit a hole in it as a kid. I jumped off of a pavilion and the way I landed caused my face to thrust into my knee. Self-harm. Years and years ago I would cause gaping wounds on my arms and legs. They still look terrible today. The worst one was when I actually accidentally cut through part of my vein and had to go to the hospital just to spend the next month in a mental hospital. Attacked by 2 Rottweilers. Scars on my right elbow, left wrist, the worst area, back, and left and right calf. Essentially neighborhood to that were semi-mean semi-okay. I was petting them one day and one had an ear infection that I was not aware of, and when I stroked past his ear it obviously hurt him and he flipped. Then the other one joined in. Managed to get away pretty unharmed all things considered. Acne. When I was a toddler I had a stick and was poking our saint of a dog. My mum told me to stop. Being a precocious child I just smiled a wicked little grin and poked her one last time. Our perfect pup snapped at me and caught a tooth on my eyebrow. I think of that wonderful dog every day as I meticulously fill in my left eyebrow. We were riding bikes one day and our dogs, both absolute saints, were across the road in a blind corner area. When a car was cresting the hill, we started to call the dogs, as anxious little children do, to get them over to us. My mother was trying to stop me, so she pushed me or hit me in an attempt to make me shut up. I slipped off balance and knocked my tooth through my lip off my bare handlebars. I have a small scar that runs right down the middle of my chin from my lip. It has robbed me of the perfect dimple genetics awarded me. But both my beautiful dogs lived long happy lives. I have many scars on my meat suit, but the best is the 2 large surgery scars from snapping my radius and ulna in a riding accident. I now have a large scar on each side, but this particular one runs down the inside of my forearm on my right, perfectly down the middle over the important veins. That's one I find most people notice but don't know how to handle. Is it from an attempt? How do you ask? I find people are very kind and cautious with me until I finally just tell them it's surgical. I work in business, so I tend to have to do a lot of handshaking where it pops out and becomes the most noticeable. Ducking horses. Tried to impress a girl. It worked. Might do again. I have a very high pain threshold, so my pranks usually involve me hurting myself. In DT class we were using hacksaws, the saws you use to cut metal, and I was joking about with some friends and made a fapping gesture with my hands. Some girl saw and called me disgusting and proceeded to say I don't deserve a hand if I was going to do that. She was one of those kids in Africa are worse than so be happy type people. So I grabbed the hacksaw and proceeded to begin sawing into my arm near my hand but not my wrist, stating well I might as well chop it off, eh? I got reported and sent to the medical room, but the look on her face was amazing. I'd nearly gotten to the bone and she was screaming.